Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Freeology Friday. It is the 5th of July.
Yes, it is.
It is the 5th of July, and I am Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson.
And it is good to see you, Aaron, as
Thank,
always.
thank you.
Hope you had a fantastic week and a fantastic 4th.
We did. It
Yeah,
was fun.
yeah.
Holidays are always better when you have kids.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that 4th of July is like Christmas and Easter. It's like it only really has significance if you have kids.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that completely.
Well, before we get started, as usual, what's in the glass?
I'm doing a margarita again tonight.
Nice.
My
Well,
drink this summer.
I'm looking to get fully anesthetized here. I'm drinking
Yeah,
an old scotch on the rocks.
it should be a fun show.
Yeah, it should be. It absolutely should be. And what a show it would be. Last week we talked about American politics in the wake of the debate, and we said something during the show that because there is an additional nuance to this in the framework of American politics, and we mentioned it, we touched it, but we didn't really unpack it. We didn't double click on it. We didn't really reverse engineer it, and that is the role of religion in
Mhm.
American politics. How does it influence, impact, or inform American politics? Is the influence, the impact, or the information of religion, is it a good thing for American politics, or is it not a good thing? And here's the thing, Aaron. I see you smiling, and I'm not being glib. I'm not being glib. And for those of you who are watching, we really earnestly solicit your input on this
Yeah,
because the thing is that Aaron and I have an opinion. I mean, and our opinions are closely aligned, but somebody else may see it another way. And the reality is, if we're going to actually get to some kind of meaningful solution in this, there has to be some dialogue. There
hmm
has to be some discussion on this because, I know me personally, if I have my druthers, I would just steamroll the whole religious aspect of it. I
hmm
just I just roll over it, and that's me. But I don't rule the world. I don't even rule the country. You know, so what do others think? And the other thing too is not just what do others think, but why do they think it? And it's important to understand this because again, if we don't, we head on this. I don't know. I'll just be honest and say that this country is on a course for disaster.
hmm
Um, I, I read something, a meme on Instagram. It said that there were millions of people in Germany who decided not to vote in 1932.
Mm.
They didn't get a chance to vote again until 1946.
Wow.
That hit me like a ton of bricks, man,
Mm.
because the whole Nazi thing was really dependent upon voter apathy. And if you look at how fascism is coming to America, it really depends on that same degree of apathy. And the one thing about the United States is regarded by the Europeans, and Asian countries as this great experiment in democracy. And I really think that unless we address this religious component,
Mhm.
I think that the American experiment in democracy is doomed to fail.
Mhm.
And in all honesty, the reason why I brought this up, or we talked about this last week, is because you and I we've talked about this, and we do believe that there are good and redeemable qualities about this country, and there are things that are worth saving, worth preserving, but we really need to have some dedicated application of critical thinking and some real application of logic and reason. And this is not to say that we discount the emotional aspect of things, because emotion is important. That's part of the human experience. But we can't allow our emotions to be ruled by something that we cannot empirically prove. So that being said, people talk about this country being a Christian nation that is founded on Christian principles, and the what is it, the beginning of the Declaration of Independence that says that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the way that clause is written, people ascribe Christianity or the Christian God or the Judeo-Christian God as the creator in that clause. Now, you and I, we've talked about this a lot, and whether or not there is a creator, is certainly a matter that can be discussed on its own merit. But when we talk about creator, are we talking about a cosmic source? Are we talking about consciousness, or are we talking about this biblical God or this God of the Quran or whatever? What exactly are we talking about? And and I think that we need to go back and actually look at some of the things that the framers of the Constitution said regarding Christianity and regarding God. I saw another article was in the Wall Street Journal today. That it was an op-ed piece. It wasn't like an actual journalistic piece. It was op-ed. But the title of it was John Quincy Adams, Christian Nationalist. And if you go back and read the writings of John Quincy Adams, you know that this guy is not a nationalist. And he, although he was a Christian, he didn't think that Christianity should dictate domestic or foreign policy. He was very, very clear about that. So I thought, I read the article. I had to, choke back the bile a couple of times as I was reading it, because again, people want this, they have this ideal that if we just turn back to God, everything will be okay. And I'm here to say that the God you want to turn it back to, this country was never turned in that direction to begin with. And if we turn to God under the auspices of what is going on today, what we will have is a shit show of epic proportions. And Aaron, that is my opening salvo for the evening.
So as I'm listening to you, I'm mindful of the fact, I don't know how many of our viewers pay attention to this stuff every day like you and I do.
Yeah.
Or in the weeds with it as much, right? And I think one of the things that we're suffering from is just the dynamic of politics in regarding presidential races and the need to turn out the vote, so that every election is catastrophic. If you don't vote for our candidate, it's going to be catastrophe. This is the most important election of our lifetime. I mean, in 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, that's going to be the line. I think every election I participated in, both sides were like, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And it's almost like the boy who cried wolf, right? It's almost like, because I mean, at the end of the day, let's be honest, almost every president that we've elected, and you're welcome to challenge this, but from my perspective, every president in my lifetime has been a moderate and has pretty much governed the same. There hasn't been a big difference in policies, say, between Bill Clinton and George Bush, and even Barack Obama to a large degree governed from the center, right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, we're saying this is the most important election of our lifetime, but not that much has really changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This one is different. And I think we suffer from a little bit of the boy who cried wolf syndrome because we use that hyperbole every time. So when you say, Derrick, in the opening, you compare it to Germany, you make a statement in comparison to where we're at today, saying, that the Germans chose to stay home and not vote, and they didn't get to vote again for another, 16 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds hyperbolic to people, I think. To people that aren't paying attention, that sounds hyperbolic. It just sounds like everything from the last other elections, except this is going even further. Wait a minute. You're saying we won't get to vote? That's crazy. That's ludicrous.
Right.
If you're not paying attention. And most people don't pay attention. They pay attention to political ads. They talk to their friends. They kind of stay within their socio-political group. So, for example, I was raised in a very, not evangelical, but very white Protestant family and environment. I remember my parents talking about Barry Goldwater. There's probably people on here, even our age, that don't know who the hell Barry Goldwater is, or they've heard the name, but they don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
So it might be good. I know we want to talk about the role of religion in this, but it might be good to get in the weeds a little bit with that and say, okay, Derrick, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Okay, Derrick, you said that in the opening statements. Isn't that just hyperbole? Isn't that just following CNN and MSNBC and fake news? And isn't this just, give me a break? So what would you say to that?
You mentioned Barry Goldwater. So I'm going to set the Wayback Machine to 1964?
Yeah, probably.
And so Barry Goldwater was the Republican nominee for the presidency of the United States, former governor of Arizona, and there's been a lot said about Barry Goldwater, both good and bad. And I had the privilege of actually meeting the man and speaking to him, and I learned that based on my experience that a lot that had been said about him was not correct. But like, for example, he was painted as a racist, but he was the first governor to desegregate his National Guard. So there you have it.
Okay.
Now, Goldwater was an interesting character because he was the prototype of the Southern strategy candidate. And the way he campaigned, because like mostly the Democrats were still the anti-Lincoln Party. They were the anti-emancipation party, the anti-civil rights party.
Correct.
And so Goldwater's strategy was to siphon off enough of these Dixiecrats to secure the nomination. But there was a problem. And Goldwater accurately, prophetically even saw the problem. Because he said that if right-wing Christians ever get the control of the Republican Party, that it'll be doomed, that its days will be numbered. And part of the thing was, and I think that the reason why Goldwater lost, because Johnson was eminently vulnerable,
right,
as a candidate. He was a flawed candidate himself, but Goldwater, his heart wasn't in it because he knew who was backing him.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And so when you looked at him, his body language, his vocal cadence, all of these things, it was bereft of the passion that people normally ascribe to him. And because of that, people were turned off. They had already had the charismatic Kennedy in 1960. Right. When some style added with substance, proved to be the tipping point in the presidential election. Well, in this particular case, you had Johnson, who was about as flavorful as white bread toast, and Goldwater, who wasn't much different. So there's no style. This was, and then the substance basically, so to your point, centrism, that everybody is governing from the center. I mean, and I'm going to get to that too about, left, right, center, because there's something to be said about all that. But so you have two centrist candidates, and Johnson happens to be the incumbent and a little bit more bombastic, and he wins.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. So you ask me, what would I say to people who say that this is hyperbole,
Mm-hmm.
that we're making a big deal out of nothing?
Right.
Well, this is what I would say. It is, when you look at the composition of the Supreme Court,
Yep.
and how that's been put together, and look at the decisions that have been rendered from the High Court.
Yep.
Especially those concerning former President Trump. What these justices are doing, they're paving the way for the same thing in in Germany they called it the enablement clause, right? And the enablement clause basically gave emergency powers to the chancellor, who happened to be Adolf Hitler. And this enablement allowed Hitler to act unilaterally without the approval
Mm-hmm.
of the legislature. So why is this important? Because if you have a court that has already established that it will not seek to prosecute clear criminal action,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a Congress that the Republican side has clearly demonstrated that they will side with Trump even to their own detriment. And then when you look at how the theocrats in this country,
Mm-hmm.
the people from Liberty University, or First Baptist of Dallas, or Crossroads Church, or any these big evangelical machines, or the Dallas Theological Seminary, and Moody, and all of this other stuff, how they're licking their chops.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Roe versus Wade was a tremendous victory for the theocrats, and it's funny how this was a litmus test question for anyone hoping to ascend to the high court, Democrats or Republicans. How will you handle Roe? And everyone said Roe is settled law, and because it has precedent, it has heft, it has substance, therefore we will not touch it. But they've touched it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now you also have marriage equality,
Right.
That is on the table, and even multiracial marriages, that's on the table. School segregation or desegregation, that's on the table. And what people don't understand is that in this election, that if we coalesce executive power under Donald Trump with the enablement of a weak-kneed Congress and a capitulating Supreme Court, this is going to be the conservative evangelicals' wet dream.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the theocracy that they have been hoping, planning, and working toward for the last 50 years, no, 60 years, let's take it back. The last 60 years, they are going to get to realize this. And y'all hear me on this, that once something like that goes into effect, and then you say, okay, now we're like for example, what was it? Was it the 26th Amendment that restricted the term limits of the president? Okay, let's repeal that. Let's have a president for life if necessary. And then why not just the president for life? Let's make sure that his offspring ascend to the presidency in the event of his demise. In other words, now we no longer have a presidency, even an imperial one. We have a dictatorship or a pseudo monarchy. And I'll never forget this. I got to tell you this story because I was driving Uber, and I had a passenger, and this guy was an interesting guy because he's a guitarist, right? And I picked him up outside of Whole Foods where he was outside playing for money. And so he gets in the car and we're talking and everything, and the guy tells me that he was an attorney.
Wow.
Until he got fed up with the law.
Yeah.
And and being about to marry an attorney, I get it. I get it. But he said something. He said, because I was saying to him, I said, I think, as we got on this political conversation, I said, I think that what this country needs is a directed shift to the left. I mean, it isn't so much that we need to go, full tilt into communism. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need a hard turn to the left just to correct, the leaning to the right that we've done. And this guy said this. He said, I'm not in favor of all this democratic shit anyway. He said, I would like to see a constitutional monarchy.
Wow.
And in saying that, without saying anything else, I knew exactly who he was supporting and where he was coming from. So that's what I would say. To the people who are undecided, that are not sure, that they're not seeing all of this, I implore you. I mean, and here's the thing: the right is very focused. They're very dedicated, and watch this. They understand that in terms of numbers, if you just go by the numbers, they're going to lose. Their time is limited. Demographics don't favor them. Birth rates don't favor them. Economic strata doesn't favor them. So basically, what they have to do now is they have to throw a Hail Mary pass toward theocracy or theocratic dictatorship.
Yep.
In order to maintain any vestige of control, because if they don't, what is going to happen to them? And here's another one of these paying attention things, Aaron, because the United Kingdom had their elections on the 4th of July, which I thought was appropriately ironic.
Yeah, sure.
And the conservatives lost in a bloodbath.
Yeah.
The Labor took 410 of the 650 seats in Parliament. You have to understand that once you have those kinds of numbers are almost impossible to overcome. I mean, basically, in order for Labor to lose now, I would say like the Tories, the Conservatives have held serve in the British Parliament for about the last 40 years. And it was all undone in one day yesterday. It would take that much time for them to regain the ground that they lost. Somebody called it an extinction. A British journalist called it an extinction level event. So again, why is this important? Because the conservatives understand that they can't win at the ballot box.
Right.
Ultimately, that's a losing proposition for them. So they have to they have to gerrymander, they have to pack courts, they have to cheat, literally, in order to win. And what I'm saying to all of you folks that are on the fence is that you can't afford to be on the fence right now. And here's the other thing too. And I wrote a blog post about this: why third parties can't win. Right now, folks, if you're voting third party, you're basically throwing away your vote. And let me tell you something. I'm preaching to the choir because in 2016, I voted third party. I should have voted for Hillary, but I voted third party. And basically, I helped to hand that fucker the election. So there's blood on my hands. So the thing that I'm saying to everybody that's watching this is like, you can't afford to be on the fence, and that's what I would say. This to your point, Aaron, like the boy, the cry wolf, or you could say that, the boiling of the frog, that they've been just turning up the temperature a little bit. Right now, folks, the skillet is on 10 and the grease is popping. And if you don't feel that now, you will feel it when your ass is cooked.
Yeah, just to give some receipts to that, I guess I would just, invite people that aren't paying attention to the details to just go read the dissent that the Supreme Court justices put to their recent ruling about presidential immunity. And just Google SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States, presidential immunity dissent opinion.
Yeah.
And read that and realize that's not coming from CNN or MSNBC or just somebody's opinion. It's pretty scary what they put in their dissents.
Oh, let me say this one thing about the dissent. If you really want to get the real crux of the dissent, read Justice Sotomayor's opinion, because hers was blistering.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing I would say is go check out Project 2025, which this is where we're bringing in religion. And I think it was today that I saw somebody, talking about Trump putting on his Truth Social format that he didn't know anything about Project 2025. It's the most contradictory statement I think he's ever put out in one, whatever they call those.
Yeah.
Tweets is what I call them, but it's not Twitter, it's Truth Social. But he said, I know nothing about Project 2025. And then he goes on to say they got some really bad, crazy ideas.
Yeah.
But you can't have it both ways. And it's a political move. He's trying to distance himself from this because it's starting to get exposed in the media, and it's damn scary.
Yeah.
And, we're not just talking about taking away, equal marriage rights or going after the LGBTQ community, but we're talking about really going after interracial marriages. We're talking about turning back the civil rights. We're talking about going after the public education system. And we're talking about taking away a woman's right to vote. And I know that sounds strong, but it's all there on their agenda. And they go to these conferences packed with people. I heard a recording of some preacher, a black guy, incidentally, preaching about how we needed to turn back basically women's suffrage, and that it should be one vote per household, and it should follow God's order. It should be God, then the man, then the woman follows the man, and the children follow the wife. So therefore, there should only be one vote per household. So, I mean, this isn't stuff that you have to dig really hard to find. This is stuff that is being promoted openly. I heard another speaker, promoting Project 2025 that said, we will do this peacefully if the left allows it. About that statement.
Right.
We will do this peacefully if the left allows us. In other words, if you just roll over and play dead and don't put up any resistance or fight, then you don't have to worry. It'll all be done peacefully. It'll all be fine. We'll come under God's rule. But then what's what he didn't say after that, right? Like, what happens if they don't allow it? You know? And these are all Trump supporters. So you don't have to do a real heavy calculus to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
So this isn't hyperbole, but let's maybe jump off with Project 2025, bring religion back into the conversation. And you're absolutely right. I have a person that I've talked with you about bringing on the show. It's a scholar in the intersection of politics, race, and religion. Yeah. And I would love to get her on here to give a really articulate historical context for the founding of our nation. And it certainly wasn't, even if you want to argue, even if somebody wants to argue, and I know it's not true, but even if they want to argue this country was founded on Christian principles, you have to understand that that predates the evangelical movement.
Right.
So the Christianity that we have today in evangelicalism is still very different from the Christianity, which was basically Protestant Reformation.
Yeah.
And so when people say we're going back, even if we concede, and again, I'm not conceding, I'm just saying for the point of argument, even if we concede that it was a Christian nation, which I don't believe at all, but even if we concede that point, it's not the version of Christianity that we're seeing today that wants to take over your lives. In fact, it really doesn't even take a deep dive to see that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is set up to prevent state church run politics.
Yeah.
So that tells us, or that tells me, I'll speak for myself, that politics and religion have been bedfellows in the West at least, and I'm not a history scholar by any means, so I'm just going to say from my own knowledge, at least going back to Constantine.
I'm glad you went to Constantine, because that was where politics and religion actually went to the altar.
Yeah, and got married.
If you want to look for the anniversary of the wedding of Christianity and politics, that was it. The Council of Nicaea.
Yep.
But continue. I'll get back to that.
So they've always been sort of bedfellows. They have a sort of a symbiotic relationship with each other, to the degree that they can work together to maintain power. Yeah. And that's really what it's all about. Religion maintaining power through ideology and philosophy and intimidation and social pressure, and then government maintaining power through their version of law and order. In other words, we're going to institute laws to create a society in our image, and then use the power of the state to punish anyone who speaks out, which is why we have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, those kinds of things, the freedom to assemble and gather. The founding fathers were concerned about that. And then also separation of church and state. The founding fathers were concerned about the philosophical and ideological power of religion married with the state in order to create sort of a double portion of bullshit, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's where I'll kick it back to you.
Well, so you mentioned Constantine, right? And I'll tell you something, man. One of the things that frustrates me about Christianity is that people really don't understand how we got there. How do we get here? How was the sausage made?
Yeah.
And the thing is that Constantine understood something. He was engaged in a civil war against his brother-in-law and his first cousin for the control of the Roman Empire. And the thing is that his rivals were really firmly entrenched by the wealthy pagans, because what happened was that Christianity became the fastest growing thing in the empire. So the majority of the people in the Roman Empire at the time of Constantine were Christians. The problem was that they had neither economic nor political power. The economic and political power was concentrated among the pagans, and that Maxentius, who was Constantine's brother-in-law, he had that on lock. So Constantine comes up with this thing where he says he's got a vision from God, and that if he put the cross on his shield, on his soldier's shield, they would emerge victorious. Well, first of all, the cross that was put on the shields was a plus sign. It wasn't the Trinitarian cross, right? Mm-hmm. Or the Roman cross. It was just basically two lines, right, perpendicular to each other, same length, height, and all of that. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is that they use paint that had titanium dioxide in it, which caused a reflection in the sun when Constantine was facing east against against Maxentius in his battle against him, that he ultimately proved victorious because the titanium dioxide reflected the sun and blinded Maxentius's troops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So little bit of history there.
Yeah.
But Constantine was like, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. Because Rome had tried to exterminate Christians. They fed them to the lions, they tortured them, they murdered them, they burned them at the stake, all of these things. And they just kept on coming, they kept on growing. And so Constantine read the writing on the wall. Now, what his big contribution was is that through his presiding bishop Eusebius, they were repelling this philosophy called Arianism. So Irenaeus, he was basically, he believed that Jesus was just a man, just a prophet, like any of the other major prophets. But there was Eusebius and his camp believed in the divinity of Jesus. So basically, what Constantine did is he had Eusebius convene this convention and lock all of these bishops in a room for like 94 days until they came to an agreement. Yeah. So meanwhile, these guys, they couldn't even go out to take a dump. I mean, they were shitting in pots inside the chamber. And meanwhile, Eusebius, who is like the presiding bishop over this, because he's Constantine's guy, he's out there fucking everybody's wife. True story. But anyway, let me get back to this. What Constantine realized is that if he was going to coalesce power in his camp, he knew he needed the Christians. Mm-hmm. So what he did is he in the Council of Nicaea, they agreed on the divinity of Jesus. They put this out there and they say, hey, Jesus is God. He's of the same essence and substance as God. And this faith is the official religion of the state. Yeah. And of course the pagans were ready to cry bloody murder, but Constantine said, hey guys, hang on. I got something for you, because what we're going to do is we're going to implement this Christianity as the state religion, but basically we're going to do everything else as far as our celebrations, feasts, and otherwise, we're going to do them in honor of your gods. Yeah. Which is why, Easter, Christmas, blah, 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 they all align with the pagan holidays. And that's how we got there. The Christianity, as we know it, is the result of the marriage of empire and religion. And again, when you look at what followed, the Crusades, the Inquisitions, all of these different things, colonialism, chattel slavery, misogyny, all of these things that the church, and by the church, I mean Christianity, Western Christianity, that they were behind. If you think that somehow what's happening now is going to be better, you're horribly misled. Because what Constantine didn't have, Constantine did not have technology. He did not have a way of speaking to everybody at once. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a way of actually physically controlling everyone in the bishopric. But now all of the ability for all of these things to happen is in place. What let me tell you something. Again, please, y'all hear my heart on this. that what Hitler dreamed of, these guys are going to do it at a scale that even Hitler couldn't comprehend. And I'm going to tell you something, man. The guys that ran the Third Reich, these were some of the smartest people that ever walked the earth. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough admission considering what they did. But this is where we're headed. And this is why that the whole model of the marriage of religion and government, why it can't happen. And let me tell you something. People always talk about, oh, we don't want the Muslims coming over here and implementing Sharia law. But guess what? What the right wingers have in mind will make Sharia law look like a kindergarten project.
Yeah, sorry, I know I'm breaking eye contact, but I'm actually looking up some Bible verses.
That's okay, man. Listen, we talked about this because, listen, all the time that we put into this Christian thing, we actually have the right to go back and use this text because
absolutely.
We have a decided investment in this.
Absolutely.
So please go ahead.
So I want to quote Jesus in Luke 6:43 through like 44, I guess. And then I'm going to read a corresponding passage in Matthew 7 out of the Message Bible, but this is just the New International Version. Jesus says, "No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit, and each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars." That is some wisdom we need to hear today, because why does he have to say that? Because you can deceive yourself with false hope. Oh, it's not going to be that bad. I can get some, grapes from the briars there. I'm sure it's not going to be all bad.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about this marriage between church and state, and you bring up the Crusades, people should at least wiki the Crusades, Wikipedia. Most people are under the false assumption that all the Crusaders did was, battle over Jerusalem and fight with Muslims, but they were fighting with other Christians. There was genocide, particularly in France.
Yeah.
Because they didn't believe that these communities were adhering strictly enough to their interpretation of what their religion meant. And I think that's where the famous quote comes from. I can't remember the Pope who said it, but, we'll kill them and let God sort them out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the mentality. So again, Jesus is saying a bad tree does not bear good fruit.
No.
And it's not hard to see that it's a bad tree. So don't deceive yourselves into thinking, oh, we can get something good from this. Now, I like this. This is the same type of thing that Jesus is saying in Matthew 15 through 23. In the Message version, he says, "Be wary of false preachers who smile a lot, dripping with practiced sincerity. Chances are they are out to rip you off in some way or other. Don't be impressed with charisma, look for character. Who preachers are in a main thing, not what they say. A genuine leader will never exploit your emotions or your pocketbook. These diseased trees with their bad apples are going to be chopped down and burned." But I just like how he says that in the Message. Like, don't be deceived by the language or promises, but look at what's actually going on. Look at the character of them and just be discerning. If ever there was a time that we needed to be discerning, now is the time.
Yeah. And so you brought up Jesus, so I'm going to bring up a little Jesus here too, right? Matthew 22:21. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and unto God that which is God.
Good. It's good.
This is the thing. What Jesus is saying here, assuming it existed, that you can't have it both ways. That if you're going to say you're going to do this God's way, and you're going to do this in accordance with God's word, then it has to be that way. You can't juxtapose or conflate the ways of God and the ways of the world, right? But that's exactly what the conservatives in America want to do.
Yep.
In other words, we want to implement and manifest the word to the degree that it benefits us, and then we'll hand the baton off to the world to take over the rest of it. And that's where we are. The whole thing, and this is a funny thing, because the whole thing about separation of church and state, because conservatives will say, well, that's not in the Constitution. And yes, dear conservative, you are absolutely right, it isn't, other than in the establishment clause of the First Amendment,
Right.
that there would be no establishment of a state church, right? However, Thomas Jefferson, this is the interesting thing, because at the time, like most of the founding fathers that were Christians, they were like Wesleyans, Methodists, um,
Right.
Presbyterians,
Presbyterians. Yeah.
but there was this rapid influx of Germanic people coming to the United States, and it was an inswell of this in Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
and they were Baptists.
Mm-hmm.
And all the rest of the Protestants feared the Baptists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what Jefferson was concerned with at that time, that Pennsylvania was the second most populous state after New York, and that they would have certain political clout and the ability to tilt policy. And so that's why Jefferson was saying in the letter that he wrote, and I think that this letter was to Madison, but in this letter he said that there has to be a wall between church and state, because Jefferson was afraid that if the Baptists had power, they would invoke theocracy and steamroll the whole American experiment. Now, in that regard, Thomas Jefferson was prescient, because when you look at the evangelicals of today, who leads that charge? The Baptists. The Baptists. And the whole thing is that if we don't put up something, a firewall, and that's the word that I'll use, because like when you look at condominiums or apartment buildings, one of the big things in order for these buildings to pass code is there has to be a masonry firewall between the units to prevent a fire from one unit spreading to the other and burning the whole thing down. So basically, the separation between church and state is a literal firewall that keeps one a flame group from exporting their flame to the rest of the country. But what we're seeing now is I think of Ronald Reagan when he spoke to Mikhail Gorbachev. He says, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall."
Mm-hmm.
And so the rallying cry of the evangelical is the same cry as Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev: tear down the wall, so that we can influence, impact, and inform state decisions based on our interpretation of faith. And this is so funny, people like Louisiana just passed some legislation saying that the 10 Commandments has to be posted in every classroom from grades 1 through 12.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. But what happens if you decide, okay, we're going to put the Islamic 5 pillars of faith in there? Or that we put something from Zoroastrianism or Buddhism or Sikhism or Hinduism, or where does that stop? And here's where it stops. They're not interested in religious equality. They're interested in religious takeover. And that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to be really Christian about it, why not put the Beatitudes?
Exactly.
Or why not put just the golden rule? Just keep it simple. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yep, exactly.
That's going to encapsulate everything that's in the 10 Commandments. And so it's just really sick. It's to me, it's scary stuff. So let me go this direction. So if you're out there and you're undecided, or you're decidedly more conservative, let's say that for you, you are worried about our border and our immigration policies. I think that's totally valid for you to be concerned about that. If you are worried about tax increases, I don't even know if that's valid, because I don't think Biden's talking about that. Really, to be honest with you, I think the only legitimate issue that they can talk about on the right is the border wall issue, which they hype up and lie about. But that's just politics, right? So I'm trying to validate. There can be issues that you're concerned about, but we really are at a place where a vote for Donald Trump could fundamentally transform America.
Yep.
In a way that it becomes more where freedom is constricted. We're not where freedom is expanded or given or respected or other people's rights are respected, but where it's constricted. And all you have to do is look at what they're saying. Like, they're not even doing it behind closed doors. They're not even doing it with hush hush. They're telling you exactly what they want to do. So here's my question. And I get it. I get all the concerns about the current president. Shared those last week on the broadcast.
Yeah.
But I guess what I would say is try to get past the narrative that they want you to believe and actually do some actual fact research. And it doesn't have to be deep. You don't have to take a deep dive. Go look at, heaven forbid you get on Truth Social, but just go look at what Donald Trump posts. Go watch interviews with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Look at Project 2025. I mean, this is look at the SCOTUS decision. I mean, the arrow is pointing in a certain direction. And so if you are more concerned, I guess I would just ask, are you more concerned about saving a few pennies? Maybe saving a few pennies at the gas station? Or, invaders from the South that, depending on where you live in the country, may or may not have anything to do with your daily life whatsoever in any kind of...
Those people are only coming for black jobs, Aaron, by the way.
Oh, God, that was ridiculous. Oh, my God. Anyway, I'm just saying, maybe let yourself step outside the box and outside the narrative, outside the emotions. Just look at what we're saying. We're just speaking from the heart based on the fact that we pay attention to this stuff every day and not just what they're saying to try to put lipstick on a pig, I guess, is what I would say. Somebody, Debbie's Dirt. Sorry, Debbie, I need to get...
Yeah, Debbie's Dirt.
What about RFK Jr.? Does he even have a chance? Nope. Not a chance in hell.
Nope.
That's my opinion, but it'll prove out.
That's not an opinion. That's an empirical fact. and let me play a game of substitution with you there, Debbie, or Debbie's Dirt. Insert your favorite third party candidate here.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Marianne?
Marianne Williamson.
Marianne Williamson, Cornel West. Put in your favorite third party candidate here, and the answer is no. None of them has a chance. Go back and read my article about why third party candidates can't win. Because if you haven't seen a libertarian or green or whatever party candidate on your school board, you're not going to see them in the White House. If you haven't seen them in your city council, your county clerk or county tax assessor, or your state legislator or local courts, state courts, if you're not seeing these parties represented in any of those areas, they have a snowball's chance in hell, assuming hell is real.
Well, let me say this, because I think the attraction to a third-party candidate, especially in this go-round, is because, go back to last week's episode, man, both candidates are they got a ton of issues. But I would say this, and again, boy who cries wolf, every election, it's the lesser of two evils. But look at the look at the agendas of the parties. Like, do you really believe that if there was some kind of international crisis, I mean, we got to quit with this Cold War bullshit.
Yeah.
That we're going to that the president's going to wake up in the middle of the night and Russia or China or whoever's firing missiles at us. Like, you need to update your maps. You need to become current. I know we grew up with that. I remember, I think it's silly now, but I remember in grade school, you had to practice getting under your desk and whatever, because a nuclear bomb was headed your way or whatever. So I think we grew up with this mythos, right? This story about nuclear weapons and destruction of the world and all that stuff. The world economically is so interconnected now. It would do China no good whatsoever, even Russia, to blow us off the map. Right. So this idea that there's going to be this 3 o'clock, because they're going to run these commercials, because they did this with Hillary. There's going to be a 3 o'clock morning call, and Joe Biden isn't even going to know his own name, but he's going to have to make a decision whether or not what he does with the nuclear football. Yeah. That ain't even a thing. Nope. I don't think that's a thing. Now, let's just, for the sake of argument, say it's a thing. Do you really believe that the people around the president, the military, the 5-star generals, are going to allow a senile old man to make that decision just because he carries the office of president? I mean, you really think it's that slapdash? That it's just that, spontaneous? So, I think put to rest these ideas that, there's going to be these decisions that this one man has to make, and he wields all this power, and he's going to be out of his mind. I don't think that's the thing at all. They want to scare you into believing that.
So let me turn that around. Let me flip the script on that. Because if we have a 3 a.m. nuclear emergency, I would rather have someone with compassion and empathy for humanity making that decision, even if they may not be of the sharpest mental acuity. What terrifies me is that let's say we get a moment where we think, and this has happened, where we think that the Russians are about to launch or the Chinese are about to launch, right? And to your point, mutually assured destruction, which is what it was called during the Cold War, is not going to happen. China cannot afford to live without us.
Exactly.
If they kill us off, they basically shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, it's like a gun owner shooting his customers when they walk in the door.
Exactly. I mean, China becomes a third world country. Russia, on the other hand, if they destroy us, their biggest trading partner are the Western Europe, and they're not going to go quietly into the night. So this whole idea of the whole mutually assured destruction, that's not going to happen. However, now this is where I'm flipping the script, is that Donald Trump, the people who he surrounds him with, are not people who are going to check him.
Exactly.
They are sycophants. They are bootlickers.
Exactly.
They are flunkies. And what do flunkies do? They enable their leader.
Yeah.
So if Trump wakes up at 3 a.m. and says, "Hey, I want to order a nuclear strike," these people,
that could be a thing.
It could be a thing. I mean, it's like, he gets some indigestion from one of his bad hamburgers, and and he thinks, okay, well, we need to do something about Xi and China, and or we need to do something about Modi and India, and so we launch an attack. I mean, this is something that this guy could do, and what his sycophants around him will do is they will justify his actions with the scripture.
I'm right.
And that's where, again, this is how religion impacts and informs this, because what they'll say is, Mr. Trump is carrying out the will of God. And there you have it. And then you do actually have mutually assured destruction, because certainly Russia and China have some sort of doomsday mechanism that in the event that they ascertain that the attack came from us, they're coming back with full force. And even India, like, and again, this is something that I tell people all the time is that, the United States and Russia used to be kind of alone in the whole space race thing. But now there are so many countries that can put something in orbit and bring it back to a specific place on the Earth. What does that mean? That means that you could put a nuclear payload into space and drop it wherever you want it. Yeah. And there, the United States can do that. Canada can do that. Great Britain can do that. France can do that. Germany can do that. Japan can do that. China, South Korea, North Korea. I mean, there's so many countries that can actually do this. So why would you want someone? And again, why would you want someone with the temperament of a toddler and the backing of the nation's most prolific religious leaders? Why would you want someone like that with the keys to the nuclear football?
Yeah, and here you got a good point, but I don't think I know those commercials are coming. You know what I mean? From the right, from the Trump campaign. At least I believe that'll be part of their push. Can you trust this guy with the nuclear football? It's not that simple. The other thing I want to say is if the Democratic candidate gets elected, I'm still not convinced it will actually be Biden, but it looks like it's going to be. But if the Democratic candidate gets elected, we get a chance to reset in 4 years because both parties will be primarying each other. So what's the worst could happen? They invoke the 25th Amendment at some point, or Biden steps down, or Biden dies, and then you got Kamala Harris for 3, 2, 4 years, 1 year, 6 months, whatever the case may be. And then you have primaries in 2028. God, it's hard to believe that number, huh?
Yeah.
And things can kind of go back to normal, maybe. But if Trump gets in, I mean, he's saying, dictator just from day one, or I don't know, the SCOTUS ruling is really scary. And I would say there's a greater chance that things don't go back to normal in 2028. So I wish we had two different candidates. I wish we had inspirational candidates that we could get behind on either side or both sides of the aisle and let them, fight it out at the polls. But unfortunately, we have the same choice that we have 4 years ago, only both men are more decompensated than they were 4 years ago because of age. Not, it is what it is.
What it is.
So what's the worst that could happen if Biden gets in there? To me, it's a no-brainer. And as far as the third party candidate, I want to address that again, because from my view, the closest anyone has ever come to being an effective third party candidate in recent history, I don't know enough about,
I already know where you're going.
It's Ross Perot. And he had a shit ton of money to begin with.
Yep.
And he actually made a lot of sense to the American people. And what did he garner? I don't even know what percent. I'd have to look it up. But what percentage of the electorate did he garner then? And he was on the debate stage.
Yeah.
And I think George H.W. Bush was the incumbent, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And Bill Clinton was, and Bush did horrible in that first debate, at least. I think all the debates he did pretty horrible. I think he was like Barry Goldwater. He just had no enthusiasm.
His heart wasn't in it.
He didn't seem to give a fuck, as far as I remember. And then RFK is such a lightning rod because of all the crazy things he said. And like it or not, I mean, agree with him or not, you can agree with him on vaccines and all this other stuff, but that's not where the American people are. The vast majority of American people are vaccinated. I know there's a good percentage that aren't, but a lot of them, and I hope this doesn't get us flagged on YouTube for using the V word, but a lot of, the vast majority of Americans are in favor of vaccines.
Yeah.
And so he is not in step with where the American electorate is at all, which a third party candidate would have to very much be in step. He is also an old white dude who can't talk,
Right.
who can't put a sentence together. Like, so he's not going to inspire younger voters. He doesn't have the style and substance combination of a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama.
Yep.
Or even a George W. Bush. Bush had his own sort of style and substance. RFK can't even come up to that bar. So when you start looking at what are the bars that he would have to reach, what are the benchmarks that he would have to reach in order to get a majority of the electoral college, the odds are astronomical. I mean, astronomical. You got a better chance of winning Powerball 5 times, probably.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean,
that's a really good analogy. And so I had said earlier that I was going to talk about this whole turn to the left thing, right? And this is what I believe. This is, and I could be wrong. We've had all of these centrist candidates. I mean, you go, Trump centrist, Biden centrist, Trump centrist, Obama centrist, Clinton centrist, George H.W. Bush centrist. All, nobody was a true conservative or liberal, right?
Right.
And the one thing that the election of Bill Clinton, I think that was a real turning point for the Democrats in not a good way, because the Democrats believed that the only way that they will win an election is to field a candidate that looked like a Republican.
Yeah.
He was a Southerner. He was from a very conservative state. That he was about law and order.
Yeah.
And that from a standpoint of fiscal policy is very conservative. And I think that so going back to when Bill Clinton ran, this was 1992.
Yeah.
The people that ran against him, Gary Hart, Joe Biden,
yeah,
Bernie Sanders, that they didn't pick someone who was to the left. Now, here's what I'm getting at, is that if we're going to combat the influence and impact of religion on politics, we need to turn to the left. In other words, we need some real godless politics. And I know that a lot of people in America don't like that. But if you take the whole God thing out of it, now we start saying, let's talk about policy from a humanistic standpoint. In other words, what works for the greater good of all, not just for this particular demographic. And that turn to the left will also empower minorities, women, the LGBTQ community, and even people like the families of immigrants, first generation Americans who came from India or Venezuela or Italy or wherever, China, Vietnam, whatever, that it empowers them, because now there's no hook from religion in the mouth of any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I really think, so for all of you third party believers out there, and most of you who are into the whole third party thing, most of you are more liberal than conservative. And if you want to see leftist policy enacted in this country, you're going to have to first find a Democrat who is leaning that way. because what you're not going to do is you're not going to brute force a third party candidate to just come in and sweep the whole thing. You're going to have to accept a certain amount of gradualism here.
Mm-hmm.
That we're going to start here, and we're going to implement these policies. We're going to talk about relieving student loan debt. We're going to talk about eliminating medical debt. That we're going to start talking about single payer health care, things like that. And if we actually bring these topics to the table for at least discussion, even if we don't move the needle right away, we're pushing the envelope, the Overton window. And I urge you guys to go back and look at our previous episode on the Overton window, because it was really, really good. And it was really educational, because what you need to do is you need to push the envelope. You need to move the Overton window to something that was previously unacceptable to the realm of acceptability. Then once you do this and you have some traction moving to the left, now you can start talking about third party candidates. But oh my God, it's like, and then the other thing too is that when you start talking about third party candidates, you have to find people who are realistically aligned. Think a presidential candidate, and this guy was the governor of New Mexico. A guy's an attorney. He's a real Renaissance guy, but he's a weed smoker. And there's nothing wrong with smoking weed, but the country is not ready to accept a weed smoker as president. That's just not we're not there yet. The same thing. I happen to like Pete Buttigieg. This country is not. You're going to have to move the Overton window to make something like that possible. It was like, if you look at Barack Obama, well, Barack Obama stood on the shoulders of giants. He Shirley Chisholm, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, people that actually ran for president and didn't win. And then some people that were suggested as president, like Colin Powell. These Black people helped move the Overton window enough for Barack Obama to get elected.
Makes sense.
You have to accept some form of gradualism that this is not going to happen overnight. And see, this is the thing where the Republicans are kicking everybody's ass in terms of policy, is that they figured it out. It's not going to happen all at once. They chose to play the long game. They played the long game with Roe. They're going to play the long game with marriage equality. They're going to play the long game with affirmative action and civil rights. They're going to play the long game. Why? Because they know that this is if they just come in and say, hey, we don't think that LGBTQ people should enjoy the same rights as heterosexual couples. They know that if they say that, that's a losing proposition. But if they can keep moving the envelope to the right and moving the Overton window, then they get to a point of acceptability with their policy.
So something else the Democrats need to do. They need to listen to the older, wiser voices in their party. And I'm thinking of James Carville, David Axelrod. They understand how to get elected.
Yep.
And I think what I see from the Democratic Party is they're showing you how they want to govern, but that's not necessarily how you get elected.
Right.
You get elected by having a singular message that is very simple, because the vast majority of the electorate are very simple, and you drive that home. So think Bill Clinton, read my lips, no new taxes.
Yep.
Right. Think George W. Bush when he got reelected. You were for the however much money or whatever before you were against it. And they painted John Kerry as a flip-flopper. And you heard that message over and over and over. Very simple. It's like advertising. It's a jingle that goes into people's brains, right? Exactly. Barack Obama, hope and change.
Hope and change.
Donald J. Trump, make America great again.
Yep.
Joe Biden, the last time, build back better.
Yep.
Like the one that can articulate a simple message over and over again. And I just don't find any kind of singular message coming from Democrats. It's like total chaos and confusion.
Yep.
I don't know what Trump's message is either, frankly, this go around, except the message of grievance. You know, we're going to take our country back.
Make our enemies pay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just all he talks about.
And listen, his people love that message.
They do. They do. And so I think that's what scares me the most is there's no consolidation. I mean, hell, there's been talk all week long about who should be the Democratic candidate. Should it be Joe Biden or should they turn to someone else? If you can't even consolidate around a candidate, you can't consolidate around a message. And I heard James Carville a couple months ago saying, I don't know what the message is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what the focus is. I don't know what the singular point is that we're trying to get across to the American people. And so I think, I don't know, man, it's an interesting time.
I mean, and this is the thing. I think that, if we take religion out of politics, I think that will go along to help people feel more engaged.
Yeah.
Because the young people don't have any desire to further or to prosecute a religious message.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if somehow you can empower and engage the left to reach the young people, then it'll turn it. And this is the other thing too. I want to say this, that the reason why the Republicans want the 10 Commandments in classrooms and they want prayer in school, because they want indoctrination. They know that if these young people are allowed to basically think freely, they will not become Republicans. So that you have to indoctrinate them young and get them, get the fear of God in them early.
Yep. Absolutely. One last thing I'll say about politics and religion, and here's the problem as I see it. We really have to distinguish, if we want to navigate the world well, between the map and the territory. And so my thoughts, my beliefs, my feelings, my perspectives, my unique experiences make up my personal map of reality. But that's all it is. It's the map. It's not the actual territory. And my map, like everybody else's map, this is just neuroscience now, is full of deletions and distortions and to some extent generalizations. So simple example, couples get into fights all the time, right? So you've never been there for me, or you never take out the trash, or you never listen to me when I'm talking, right? Really? Never? There's never been a time I listened to you when you were talking. There's never been a time. So that's just the way memory works, right? So there's this element of accepting the fact that the map is not the territory. I've got my ideas. I've got the reasons that I believe those ideas. I have my beliefs. I have my philosophies. Those are all a byproduct of the knowledge that I've been exposed to and my personal life experience and the way I think and feel. And so I understand where I start and where I end. The problem with religion is that they believe that the map is the territory, because they believe their map was drawn by God himself.
Right.
So I could say my map was drawn by my personal experiences. I still believe in a creator. I still believe in God. And I will tell you flat out, the vast majority of that conclusion is the result of my personal life experience.
Yeah.
Right? The problem with fundamentalist religion and with this whole thing of putting religion and politics together is we're saying this is what God wants. The 10 Commandments is how God wants you to live. We're doing a right thing. We're doing something that's endorsed by the God of the cosmos. We are saving these young people's souls. That's what they get you to buy into by doing this. We are, by turning them into Christians, by turning them into, and I agree with you. I think very consciously, very intentionally, with eyes wide open, it's a political strategy to create the base in the next generation.
Yep.
But for the electorate and the sincere followers, they get you to believe that the map is the territory, because this map is endorsed by God. This map is endorsed by Jesus Christ. This map is endorsed by the God of the cosmos, the God of the universe, the creator of all, the one that has the power to destroy body and soul in both body and soul in hell. And so we lose that map territory distinction if we go too far with our religious beliefs and our faith.
So this is where I'm gonna hang my hat and close. Is that the problem with religion is that most people haven't given enough study into how it came to be, right? And the reality is that if you
Very true.
understand how Christianity came to be, you'll understand the likelihood of it being the word of God is very slim. Now, if you start with that premise and say, okay, even if you say, okay, I believe this for me, I believe this works for me, I can't necessarily say that this works for anyone else, that this is, that this is going to benefit anyone else. And that's the real challenge, is that to be, and I'll tell you, I get a lot of pushback from this all the time, because I say, well, the problem is that people believe this in groupthink instead of in individual expression. If people believed in God, people believed in Jesus, people believed in Allah, people believe in Buddha, if they believe that individually, and they say this works for me, that's fine. That's okay. But when you say, not only does this work for me, but it will work for you because it should work for you, because this is the one true way. And now you've stepped past the boundary of yourself. I always say your rights end where my rights begin.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would nuance it a little bit differently. I would say it a little bit differently. I would say, I think it's okay if someone says, this has worked for me, and I think this will work for you. It's when they go into, this is how it has to be for everyone, that I have an issue.
Exactly.
And you said that, but it's kind of a metaphor, an example, or analogy. I don't know. I'm getting old, dude.
Well, don't talk about old, man.
I'm just saying, I think since I had COVID, I do have a little bit of that cognitive stuff that they talk about still going on. But becoming a millionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a pathway to becoming a millionaire. And if you follow my pathway, you can become a millionaire too.
Yeah.
But how many different ways are there to be a millionaire?
Yeah. Many.
There's so many different ways you can get there, right? So I think it's okay to say, this has worked for me, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm putting it out there, and I want to share this with the world, and it worked for me, and it can work for you too. I think it's when it becomes, again, universal law, God endorsed, word of God. This is how it has to be for everyone.
Exactly.
This is the right path for everyone. That's when we get ourselves into trouble.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, it's okay. It's okay to say, hey, this works for me. And it's even okay to say, hey, this works for me, and it might work for you too.
Right. Might is the key word there.
Might, right. But when you say that this works for me and you need to adhere to what I believe in,
exactly,
that's when we get off the rails.
Yeah. And I think so the problem then for me becomes not just people trying to push their ideas on other people, but this idea that my ideas are God ideas, and so therefore you have to believe them. Exactly. Or we want to fundamentally restructure society, because if we don't, the judgment of God is going to come. Or if we do, we're going to live in this utopia. And I'm telling you, go watch The Handmaid's Tale, man, because that's utopia for a lot of people in this country. I hate to say it, but that is utopia for a lot of people in this country.
Well, that's the thing. And we need to really delineate the difference between what is utopia and what is dystopia.
Yeah.
Because utopia works for everyone. Dystopia works for the few.
Yeah.
It works for the people that adhere to it. and that's the Handmaid's Tale in a nutshell, you know.
Yeah.
So how do we?
I've never seen it, by the way. That's my caveat. I've just heard people talk about it, so I might have been a little out of pocket there because I haven't watched a single episode. Just as my disclaimer and in interest of integrity and honesty. There.
Yeah, I'm not a follower of it, but I've watched enough episodes to know that, man, this is potentially where we're headed, you know. And again, if you're willing to entertain religion in your politics, be prepared to eliminate democracy from your politics.
True. That, yeah. That right there is a good period, exclamation point on the end of the discussion, I think. I love how you said that. So, all right. So I don't know. I'm curious how we cover a lot of different topics. We had talked at one point, Derrick, you and I, about, let's kind of not be as political as we have been in the past because we want to reach an audience with our broader message.
Yep.
We have very strong political opinions, but we don't want to use those as a way to alienate people from the broader message because it's not our purpose. We're not a political channel or broadcast. So I'm just curious from people for your honest feedback. If you like this kind of stuff, you don't like this kind of stuff. I would just be interested in hearing from people.
Yeah.
As far as thumbs up, do more of this, or thumbs down, I hate it because we shouldn't talk about religion and politics. Although we talk about religion almost every episode, but the political thing, it's such a firestorm, but it's such an important time. And I do think that the way we approach this, Derrick, is very measured and very logical.
Yep.
And very open-minded to facts, not to narratives and false assumptions and hyperbole, but to actual facts. So
and let me say this: like I think that we're highly factual, but I also know that we're opinionated. That this is our opinion, and I make sure that everyone knows this. That I'm not trying to say that that how we think is the right way. What we're doing is we're taking, I think that we have an opinion, but our opinion is an informed opinion. And I think an informed opinion carries more weight than an uninformed opinion. And that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Good distinction between facts and informed opinion. Absolutely. 100% agree with what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to look at any of the comments, or you need to run?
Yeah, we can do that for a little bit. So Debbie Sturt says, I'm fine with it. I like hearing different points of view. Bravo, Debbie. I love that. I wish there was more of us out there that are open to different points of view. Matt says, thumbs up, like it. Tommy, this was great. Very needed conversation, and you two are great at it. Thank you, Tommy. Matt says, Handmaid's Tale is damn near prophetic at this point. Honestly, I haven't seen it. I was a little out of pocket, but
he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Joe Mashuda gives us a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Matt says, your rights are my rights. Is that a thing? It absolutely is a thing.
Debbie says, by the way, I'm drinking an old fashioned. That's still my favorite cocktail.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yesterday, I was in a bar in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of the best old fashions that I ever had. This guy, I mean, you talk about craftsmanship. I mean, wow. First of all, he asked what whiskey did I want as a base, and so I said Bullet Rye, and so he built it from that. But there was, of course, the Langostino bitters. There was a cherry liqueur that he put in it, in addition to the cherry syrup, right? Mm-hmm. And he put a shot of brandy.
Oh, in. Wow.
Yeah.
That might be one for the book.
Yeah. We may need to craft one of those for the show. Let me ask you a quick question. Are you going to be in Dallas on Friday next week, or are you coming in on Saturday?
No, I'm coming in on Friday, but I can't remember what time my plane lands. Okay. I didn't think about that. I should have thought about that, but I figured you'd be busy anyway. So
no, I won't be that busy. I mean, it's shit. If we could do a live show together, that would be.
What if we did it a little bit later?
that's a possibility.
All right, I'll have to look at my flight schedule.
Yeah, let me know, and then you have to kind of gauge your because travel is arduous.
Yeah, I think I went for. Yeah, I'll have to look. I was looking at price, and also I have to drive to Denver, which is about 2.5 hours away. So yeah.
Yeah, in case you guys are wondering what we're talking about, a week from Sunday, May and I are getting married. Aaron is the officiant. So we're excited.
Honored and looking forward to it.
Yeah.
That would be great though if we could do something live. That'd be awesome.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely amazing.
See, Tommy says I'm skipping over a lot of comments, but Tommy says I voted third party in 2016 too, but everyone was telling me that would lead to Hillary winning. So
yeah, and here we are, Tommy. But you know what though, I voted third party. I voted for the Libertarian, and the funny thing is that Gary Johnson I did not know personally, but his running mate Bill Weld I did, and I thought, okay, Bill is going to kind of temper this thing, but he really didn't, and because he was the governor of Massachusetts, he had been a Republican, but I think that Bill was one of the last few, I guess what you could call a liberal Republican,
yeah.
Maybe he should have been the front runner, but hey, woulda, shoulda, coulda.
All right, everybody, unless you see something else you want to comment on, Derrick.
No, I don't see anything else. And Tommy says, I want to hear jet lag inebriated Aaron tell me how. Yeah, make sure you have a couple of drinks on the flight before
I will.
Before you get down. And I'll make sure that I'm suitably sauced up before you get there.
That'd be great. All right, Tommy. Well, you laid down the gauntlet, bro. I'm gonna pick it up.
Yeah. So guys, y'all stay tuned. We may we may do it a little bit later, depending on what Aaron's schedule is, or and we'll work it out.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for growing in real time with us, and thank you genuinely from our hearts for listening to us, making us part of your life, part of your Fridays. If you're watching by replay, whatever time you watch us, thank you for letting us be part of your life.
Indeed. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. Hope you have a great weekend.
All right.
And hair grease.
Peace.